Wow, this is good. I'm excited. Let me move this forward a little bit here. Oh. Well, hopefully you guys got to chow down real quick. That's the kind of meal you can't prepare ahead of time and let it sit, from what I understand. You got to have it fresh. So we're just thankful for the cooks and those. Can we give them a big hand? Those that have been working so hard to make sure we're fed and don't want to feed us a bunch of mush, so they made it on time, okay? But because we ate a little bit later, that actually is a good advantage, because that means we can go ahead and move up tonight's earlier. So we're actually going to move it up to 6. So by the time we're done with tonight, nobody's freezing. Wouldn't that be nice? And we can have more fellowship, and then we're going to eat after tonight's meeting. Are you okay with that? Did you get enough food to carry over till about 7:38? Right? Okay. All right. So this is going to be good. So we'll be starting at 6 instead of 6:30. And we're not going to really have a lot of worship in this particular time. I'm going to just simply let Lynn come up, even though I'd like to say a few things too. Come over here and just stand with me. We met Jodi. Sean and I met Jodi. Lynn, you've known her for what?
13 years.
13 years. We haven't had that honor of knowing Jodi for that long. But I will say that when we connected, there was definitely an increase. There was definitely sparks flying, right? In a positive way, and in an iron sharpening iron way. But from the time that we have met you, and that was what, a couple of years ago?
That was in May of 19.
May of 19. We have seen the increase of heaven. We have seen so much fruit and growth in your life. And we've just seen you come into your own, into that place of rest. And we're so proud of you. And we believe in who you are and what you carry. From the moment I met you, I believed in you. You know, and that's why, well, you know, when we ordained you as well, again, it wasn't about status or that. It was about honor. And, you know, and I wish Roger was here, because Roger, her husband, is amazing. This is that kind of guy that if you're religious, you're going to be offended. I mean, he will belt it out. And I mean, he'll just go crazy, loving God in front. He don't care what people think. I love that about him. He's just a free spirit. And hopefully, I don't know if you're watching, Roger, but we miss you and we love you. And I'm hoping that he sees this. I'm pretty sure he's going to be watching you, you know. And so, without further ado, I'm gonna let Lynn just share a little bit about her experience with Jodi. Tell them everything, and then we're just going to let it flow. Amen?
Thanks. Okay, so you're in for a treat. I've known Jodi for 13 years. She's the real deal. She's been a lover of God for a lot longer than that, and she's walked through some stuff. So when you hear her today, I'm saying this because when you hear what she's sharing today, we would have the tendency to think, she doesn't know what I've been through. Well, she's probably been through it. I'm just going to say she came out of abject poverty. Is that the right word? Like bad poverty, bad past life. Just the worst of the worst is all I can say. Out of Seventh-day Adventism, sorry. But that can put some legalism on you. I'm not saying we love you guys, but there's some stuff, you know, that might not be quite right there in that teaching, and it can bring you up that way as a child, and you can get messed up. So she was messed up. She was the performer of performers, the worker of workers, the doer of doers. Like she felt she had to perform her way to everything, to the Father. So what I'm saying is she's the most amazing person. The revelation and the keys that she carries, if we will listen and receive it, and it could be a little offensive, because I know I certainly don't like to be told, well, Lynn, it's because of what you're believing that this is happening in your circle world. But it's true. It's true. And we can love one another enough to speak that truth, right? It's the truth in the inward parts of what we're believing. So I think this morning the Father took care of a lot of that. So if we just believe he's crazy about us, there'll be no problem in receiving what she's going to say. Okay? So I just want to honor you, welcome you. I'm so glad I'm your friend. I'm so glad we're still friends. I'm so glad we're still walking this journey out together. We're both very different than we used to be, right? Hopefully. I mean, you are. Hopefully I am. But she's amazing. She's amazing. She's a prophet. I have to say that. Just like I'm an apostle. And, we all are. But she is a prophetess. She's right on the money. If she gives you a word, you can take it to the bank. Okay? So she might do that. I don't know what she's going to do. But she's going to release some divine inheritance, some keys to unlock you so that you can receive everything that God said was already yours. See, this stuff's already yours, but we don't really believe it because we think we're, maybe a little wormy. So anyway, maybe she might share a little bit more. I don't want to say too much more, but yeah, I'll say whatever I want to. Well, let's see. Let's see. How many times have you been married? No. Just kidding. Once. Twice. 3 times. 3 times the money. Okay, yeah, I've been married. Yeah, that's all. I'm just saying that does not disqualify or qualify any of us. It does in the church, but so anyway, I was joking around, but her life has been one of extreme hardship and extreme duality and separation and performance. And now she's come into, I am one with the Father. There is no separation. He loves me. It's finished. I don't have to do a thing. So I just wanted to lay that a little bit so that you can know she's relatable, and probably anything you've gone through, she's gone through or more, and has overcome. Right? This is the love that overcomes the world, right? Is what Jesus said. So I'm going to welcome you with that. She's amazing. She's one of my best friends. I'm going to keep saying that. she's one of.
She's always told me, I'm your best friend, I'm your best friend.
And look at us now.
I know. And so I do have a girlfriend back home that has kind of journeyed with me as well. We were kind of a trio there, so to speak, and that's Kathy, and I know you're out there and supporting me, and I just love you. I just want you to know that. I will be sharing some testimonies about some stuff that we've journeyed together where we have had miracles happen. And okay, so to start with, there is a few things that I need to kind of make sure that I let you know that, by the way, does somebody have a Passion Translation here? Does somebody have the Passion Translation on your phone? You do? Oh, good. I'll have him read. Okay. Later I'm going to have you bring it. I just want to make sure somebody had one because I don't. So basically, I'm probably going to say some stuff today that is going to offend your mind or shock you. We are all powerful to believe, okay? So you are powerful. I want you to know that right up front. You are powerful to believe differently than me. However, I just encourage you, and if something I say doesn't fit in your grid right now, to not throw it away and just to maybe put it on the back burner until God's ready, you guys are ready for that journey, okay? Because I'm going to say a lot of stuff and hopefully break some stuff of our mindsets that will bring you what you truly desire, because what you truly desire is actually already in you. We just haven't been taught properly how to access it, and we haven't been taught properly how to think. Because, oh my gosh, God's sending me here right away. Okay, well, first I just want to kind of share, I mean, I did go through a lot. They said, well, share some of your journey. It'll make you more relatable. I do know I've had some conversations with different people where when we spoke, it ministered to you where you're at because we had different connections. But every one of you guys that I spoke, where we spoke, it was a different part of my life, but it happened to be the thing that fit that person that I was speaking to at the moment. Let's see. So my childhood, I'll just kind of briefly explain. So my childhood, I still don't remember the first 10 years of my childhood. Little bits and pieces that I do remember were very traumatic. So by God's grace, sometimes He'll allow a memory not to happen for the grace. Then that way, all He has to do is heal the what do you call it? The aftermath, so to speak. He can heal that, but you don't have to have the memory of it, so to speak. And so anyway, I was raised in my dad left by the time I was 2. So my mom kind of raised us, and so basically, she has started having children really young. She was into, she was raised Seventh-day Adventist, and then what she would do. Have you ever heard of the people who go to church and then they go this extreme, that extreme, this extreme, that extreme? Well, my mom would really try to be a good Seventh-day Adventist, never could make it, and then so she'd extreme the other side: drugs, alcohol, keggers, that are you know what I'm saying? It was like so I lived in the yo-yo life, right? But the problem with yo-yo life is that person is very unstable. So Sheila, I don't know if she's even here, but you know how she had spoke about how she was raised with a lot of money and had zero discernment. Well, when you're raised in the atmosphere I was, by the time you're 2, you probably have more discernment than most adults because it's a survival instinct. Okay, so yeah, because you know when you throw in drugs, alcohol, and a lot of emotional stuff that hasn't been dealt with, you get a lot of anger, abuse. Like there's just a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? So we'll just kind of. And I was a kid, of course, you know, that didn't have any money. So, like, I literally, okay, just to let you know, I don't like to camp. And let me tell you why. Because people go spend a bunch of money to pretend they're poor. And I live like that. And I don't know why y'all like to do that. I just am saying it doesn't make sense to me. You go spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars to go spend 2 days out in the mountains to pretend like you have nothing. And look, I live there and don't invite me. Unless you got an RV, don't invite me with you, okay? If you got a nice RV, okay, then I'll get out, sit by the campfire. That's totally cool. But, you know, I like my air conditioning and a nice soft bed. Okay. All right. So we'll just kind of move. But anyway, I actually, for my age, you know, a little older than me, it might have been more of a norm, but my age, we grew up, we had an outhouse, and, you know, friends don't want to really come over because, you know, they find out they have to go to the bathroom in an outhouse. And that isn't just because we're out camping, it's because that's where I live, you know. Nobody knew people my age don't even know what a thunder pot is. And I'm like, yeah, try having it spelt on the carpet. That's gross, you know. Like, yeah, so we, you know, it's just one of those things. That's where I grew up. All right. But here's the deal. My life was pretty harsh. I remember one time, you know, and I was never really a big fan of the outdoors, the heat. I had really bad allergies. God, of course, healed me for those because they don't really exist. But it took my husband telling me that a lot of years and me being really mad at him for telling. He's like, yeah, God, you just give them to him, and then he can tell whether or not there's really allergies. You know what I'm saying? Because when you have something and you're suffering from it, and somebody comes up and tells you those things don't exist, it's just something some man made up. That's not nice. I mean, I'm miserable, right? Eyes, no, like, okay, but guess what? Kept saying, allergies don't exist. Guess what? I don't have allergies. So he was right. Didn't like it, but he was right? Okay, so childhood really, really bad. And I remember my mom, you know, in order to get anything done, I guess, she would throw us outside in the summer, lock the doors and wouldn't let us in. And then she would open up the door, throw some paper plates of food, lock the door and lock us out all day long, right? And so I really struggled. I remember one time, I can't believe I'm telling you this because I've never had to say this in public before. But so I remember one time the only coolness that I could find was under the car. And I remember crawling under the car because it was the only cool shaded place. And I remember just closing my eyes and asking God if I could either die or wake up grown up. So anyway, so we'll just kind of fast forward, you know, raised in the religious, you know, Seventh-day Adventist. It was like, has anybody ever heard one of the Revelation teachings on Seventh-day Adventists? Okay. Scary. Okay. Yeah, right. So anyway, so when I was a little kid, they didn't think about it, but they would take us to these Revelation seminars and, you know, talk about all the demons and, you know, everybody's going to leave you and he's coming in a cloud. And if you're not okay, you know, everybody's gonna float up but you. And I remember being a little kid and having nightmares that Jesus came back and everybody's floating up in the air and I'm like stuck and I'm like, oh, I did something wrong. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm little, right? Like scared. And so then, and my grandmother, she was the very black and white person where I got that from. My mom was the they call her rebellious, but really it's the people that just know they can't measure up. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't a performer, and only the performers, just to let you know, are the ones who can rise to the top in the religious community. Just saying. It's only us, you know, the performers, you know. And here's the problem with me, though. Not only was I in performance, but I had spirit of excellence, and you put those two things together, and boy, was I a performer. So it took me a long time to understand the difference between performance and excellence. That's another part of my journey. But anyway, those two working together before I realized that, man, I was Superwoman. You know, and then I remember one time, and God had healed me from that, and I'm like, but I don't like this because I don't get that stuff done anymore. Like I kind of mourned it because I was like, man, I could get a lot of stuff done. What's up with this, you know? But anyway, so I'm kind of a little bit all over the place, obviously, I'm realizing. But anyway, so a lot of my journey was that when my husband and I met 25 years ago, I had a vision that we were supposed to get married, but when he first met me, he said that he had just came out of a marriage that they were married 9 years, and she had cheated on him 11 times that he knew of. And finally his dad said, honey, because, he's a Christian trying to follow, the whole Christian thing. Finally his dad goes, honey, you can't make somebody love you, And so he finally was able to walk away. Well, this summer he met me, he was at his grandpa's funeral and pretty wounded, and he says, yeah, it'll be a cold day in hell before I ever get married again. The whole family knew, right? So literally like weeks later, here comes me up there, and I'm getting out of this car, and as I'm getting out, I've worn my hair like this forever because it never goes out of style, okay? Just saying. So that was 25 years ago. It still looked like this. It's just easy, okay? So I was, as I was getting out of the back of the car, he said, as soon as he saw the top of my head, he said, all of a sudden, and mind you, okay, I'm going to say this because it might freeze somebody. He was stoned out of his mind, okay? Now, mind you, I went to the performance, and drugs, stoners, all those people scare me because I don't want to live the grown-up life, so I want nothing to do with you. So when I first met him, it was like, ew, because he was stoned, like, the whole stoned thing, and I was like, gross. I was like, I am not interested in that, and because long story short is the whole reason we went up there is because these people I knew, they said, oh, we're soulmates, and I'm like, oh God, bring me my soulmate, I wasn't even walking with him, but we talked about him, and so they go, oh, I know who your soulmate is. I was like, oh, who is it? They go, Roger, and then his wife goes, Roger? And I'm like, who's Roger? Anyway, so I go up to meet my soulmate, right? He comes, and so as I'm coming out of the car, right, he says he feels like this warm honey that just goes like really slowly over his whole body, and God says, you're going to marry her. And so now I don't know this at this point, right? But inside him, he's like, okay. Now, if you knew me, he goes, okay, just have her tell me she loves me, and then I'll do the rest. Oh, he did not know what he was after. Whew. Poor guy. Okay, so anyway, but then when I'm meeting him, he's thinking, oh, I'm going to get to check her out, this, that, and so I'm thinking, gross, right? So I don't care what you ask me. I'm not nervous around you because you are stoned. And he's got that 70s, feathered hair, stoned. I mean, stoned, feather. Anybody remember that? It was like, oh my gosh, classic stoner. I avoided you in high school, no, thank you. And well, anyway, long story short, I'd already been really wounded. I ran from relationships. My mother had been really wounded, and so she, without me knowing it, she grew me up to not trust men. She was a man hater, and because she hated men, she thought she was protecting us. So I was really scared. So it was like one of those things like, I'm going to leave you before you leave me, and that's what happened in my life. I'd been married twice, once 6 years, one 3 years, and so when my husband found that out, he's like, well, God, she's married 6 years, 3 years, she's cutting them in half. Will we make it past 18 months? So he's a little worried, but anyway, but when he asked me about the Lord, and I said, oh, no. Because I tried that. It's like, I don't believe in organized religion. And so he goes back to God going, what? Well, look at us. We don't believe in it, though, do we? I'm back to where I was when we met. I told him we've come full circle. I mean, you talked me into go to church with you. I did all that stuff you asked me to do, but now look where we are. You should have just listened to me to start with. My gosh, right? Okay. So it's like we'd have saved a whole lot of time if he would have just kept following me instead of me following him, right? Oh, but God had another plan because he wanted me to journey the journey of the people in the church because he wanted me to be able to have compassion and be able to relate to where you're at because he knew this was my journey. Now, just to let you know, so if God finally tells me to marry him he has to, because everybody's like, oh, God's telling me you guys should get married. And I'm like, well, why is he telling everybody but me? And they go, well, have you asked him? And I'm like, no. So I wait till you're alone, because that was back when you don't pray for anybody, you're in the bathroom. God, if this is really you, I need a 2x4 experience. You're going to have to let me know that I know, because I don't want to do this again. I mean, I felt like a failure at marriage, okay, this doesn't work for me somehow, Didn't know why, because it was never my fault, Not. Okay, I'll have to see if I go to that part of the journey. Oh my gosh, I'll tell you more about me. But anyway, so I did. The only vision I ever had was when God gave me a vision that told me to marry him. And I won't go into that right now, but then I was so excited because, his family's all Christians, right? I was so excited. It's like, you guys, okay, smoking my cigarette, and guess what? I had a vision from God. And you know what he said? And of course, I don't know this until one of the kids comes and tells me later behind my back, you know, my mom said, well, how could God give her a vision? She's not even a Christian. And I'm like, oh, church woundedness. Ooh, they don't like me. Ooh, I'm not good enough. Ooh, you know what I'm saying? Okay, so it's like, and so now I'm retreating, right? It's like, I thought these people who are, you know, because if you're not a Christian, you guys, I'm just telling you, the people who are not in this world thinks that you guys are so good that we can't even reach. Like, we are not adequate to be like, when somebody would invite me to church, I'm like, no, I'm not that good. I can't go. I can't go. I'm not that good. Okay. So that was my whole thing. And then all of a sudden I hear that and I'm like, oh, because I'm thinking they're going to be happy for me. No, they've never had a vision. They're like, how could God talk to you? You're not even a Christian. Right. So it's like, ooh. And so, well, and then his family was very Christian people. That's all I'm going to say. And but yet they wanted control, right? And so my husband, thank goodness, he could really hear the Lord. When he met me, he says, Jodi, because I was like, I don't know him. He goes, oh, Jodi, you don't even. What's really crazy, he says, is I know I hear God. He said, and I disobey. He says, but you're clueless. And God's got his finger like this going, and you're doing it. He says, you don't even know it. He said, and I was like, really? Oh, because I would just do stuff and it would work out, you know. And he could totally see it was God, but I couldn't. It was God in me. Because you know what? God's there. You don't have to know it. But he just is. So we moved to Missouri. We lived there for 9 years, and then now we're back in the Northwest. But anyway, so my husband and I, the journey in our marriage has not been easy. Went through a lot of healing. I went to Missouri to become one of those, what do they call them? Like radical Christians, because you know he was raised in the Christian church. I was raised Seventh Adventist, right? We moved to Missouri because had to get away from family so we could become a family. Just to let you know, forgot this part. He had 4 kids, I had 2, and then we had 1 together. I remember, I got to tell you this. So I remember, so he has custody of 3 of his. I have custody of 2 of mine. So we already have 5 kids, right? Go 2 to 5 kids, and you just tell me how well that took me a minute, right? So to figure it out. So I remember, you know, we're going to church and I'm finally figuring all this church stuff out and hearing God and like learning all this stuff. And I remember he goes, Jodi, we need to talk. We need to talk. And I'm like, okay. So I sit down at the table with him. He goes, Jodi, and he's serious as can be. Like, he's like, I really feel like God's telling us to have another baby. And I go, get thee behind me, Satan, right now. And I literally said it like that because I heard about this deliverance stuff, and that is Satan coming out of you. I am just telling you, right? I'm like, you are gone all day. You don't even get what you just said. But guess what? God was right. We did have one. He's beautiful. He just turned 21. Anyway, but all this stuff was a huge journey. I grew up because of the way I grew up. Well, let me put it this way. I was convinced that getting married and having kids was horrible. When I was 15 years old, I don't even know why I'm telling you guys some of these stories. Somebody must need to hear this. So I was 15 years old, and I remember I was doing the dishes and stuff, and, you know, this is what girls do. Well, I'm finding out now. I didn't know. I was told it was kind of bad based on this story. So I was sitting there and I was dreaming, and my mom would go, "What you thinking about?" "Oh, someday I'm going to get married and have kids, and you're doing that, right? Okay, you girls do that, right? That's what we're supposed to do, is dream about how wonderful family is, you know." And I don't know how much longer after this happened, but my mom's friend had just had a baby that was 3 months old and had a 2-year-old. And it was a Thursday. It was a Thursday morning, and I was getting ready to go to school. I was like a freshman, and I was 15. And my mom goes, "Hey, will you watch the kids tonight? Will we go out?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, not a problem. You know, 3-month-old, 2-year-old." And then my brothers. Okay, I had 2 little brothers as well. You know, they were like 11 and 13 maybe. And so I've got all these. Yeah, I can do it. I'll cook dinner. I can manage. You know, and so. Thursday night rolls around. and it's getting pretty late. The baby wakes up. I have to get up in the middle of the night and feed it. I'm supposed to go to school the next day, and I'm doing all this, and like the baby, like then Friday morning happens, and like I'm having to try to get my brothers up and get them out to school, and I try to get ready while I'm feeding this 2-year-old and this baby and all this stuff, and then I send them off to school, and I'm just thinking, okay, they'll be here anytime. And just to make the long story short, they showed up Sunday night, laughing, drugged up, still drunk from a 3-day drunk, laughing, saying, see if you ever freaking dream about having kids and getting married. Okay? So, I start out in life thinking kids are bad. See, they're supposed to be seen and not heard. And that marriage is horrible and it's not something to dream of. And so, so I had a lot, when my husband said he'd do the rest, he did not know what he had made a deal with God about. Just saying. Of course, I didn't think I was that screwed up. I thought it was him, I mean, come on, I don't smoke pot. It's him. I mean, I don't do any drugs. Yeah, I smoke a cigarette, but I don't do drugs. I mean, hello, it's the druggie's fault, right? I kind of joke now. He's probably just had to stay stoned to deal with me, really. But anyway, yeah. Well, because it took me many years down the road, and I asked him one time, I was like, why do you smoke pot? What is the draw to this pot thing? I mean, I tried it once in high school, and all I did is got stupid for about 30 minutes, made people laugh, ate everything in sight, and passed out. What do you like about this stuff? I just didn't understand. My friends always wanted me to, only because I was funny for about 30 minutes. But then I'd say, I'm only going to be here for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to clean out your cupboards. Do you really want me to get stoned with you? And they'd be, yeah. And I'm like, you're crazy. Okay, because I'm a control person, so I have to really think hard, anyway. So I was like, I don't understand the pull to it. But anyway, so one time I asked him, I was like, what is it about pot that, that you like? Because I never understood, right? And he said, because it helps me to just hone down, because my mind scatters so much, it just helps so much. Well, that's what he said. And then he goes, but sometimes, and this is where I come in, I think. He goes, and sometimes, he says, you just take it in, and as you blow it out, you blow it off. I'm like, oh, you're talking about me. Because who was it? Was it Trish or so? Who was it that just got done saying that they were the nag? Oh, I don't associate with that at all. Oh, my. Okay. So anyway, yeah. So the good thing about it is that years ago I couldn't have joked about this. You could ask my friend Lynn, but now, because once you get free and you get to the place where I am, and you actually realize you can love yourself and you actually like yourself, you can joke about yourself. I couldn't have done this 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, because when you're still in that wounded place, well, some people use jokes and laughter to deflect. You know what I'm saying? So that's a little bit different, but I wasn't like that. Remember, Sirius doesn't joke usually. But anyway, so the journey has been real. If anybody's struggling with marriage, just to let you know, the only reason people are married, like we're celebrating our 25th anniversary in November, by the way. Yay, right? Hey, it is worth something. If you're not clapping really loud, that means you ain't married, or you just married somebody who's like an angel or something, because, yeah, that's not, yeah. Okay, so just to let you know, people stay married 25 years. It's only because they decide to. It ain't because it is easy at all, okay? Because it's like you take two different people, have two completely different set of ideals, opposites attract, right? They come together, and then they both want their way. Now, you've always got it's the truth, right? You've got the really loud one, right? You got the really loud one who's going to try to, I'm going to dominate. And then you got the quiet one who's like, we're domineering and big mouthed, and, let's see if I can yell louder than you to get my way. And the other one has to be like, okay, the only way I'm going to survive this, to get any kind of my way, is I'm going to have to be a little passive aggressive. How the heck am I going to do this? No, but seriously, it's like, okay, until you get healthy, right? Now, if you're healthy, it's not like that. I'm talking about two screwed up people like we were getting together, right? And, but I don't even know why I'm going here. This is not my message. Oh my gosh, I hope somebody needs to hear this. But anyway, so 25 years later, oh my gosh, this is totally not my message. But 25 years later, God held us together, and I still don't exactly know how. Geez, Lynn, are you sure I should have started with my freaking past? I mean, come on. Okay. All right. But anyway, the good news is 25 years later, we are literally together. And one of the things I'm going to share with you in a minute is that some of the dreams coming true. Because I was such a mess, I went to counseling for 5 years right after we were married. So literally, I was in the counselor's office 6 hours a week. We had 5 kids. So they were in Tuesdays, 3 of the kids were in counseling. On Thursdays, 2 of the kids, and then me. So we were literally for 5 solid years. We took the summers off. We're in counseling. When I was dealing with my past, had to get on some depression medicine, and then that depression medicine still didn't help. So I had to get on this thing. It was called Lexapro or something. And then I got on this Wellbutrin because I had no Thrive for Life, and I needed. Because when you are facing yourself, and I think the reason I'm saying this is because sometimes when we do face ourselves, if there's so much trauma, we need help. You know what I'm saying? But what I didn't realize, I mean, I knew that I didn't live the great life that everybody else did, but I didn't realize how my life really was. Because my counselor goes, Jodi, what you don't understand, he said, most people live through a couple of traumas in a lifetime, but your life has been one trauma after another, and you think it's normal. And so when I was going through this healing, because you're a little screwed up, but really it's everybody else because, my heart's good, because it really was, but I didn't realize all the stuff that had, all these things that I was very adamant about in order for me to feel safe or secure or to make me feel like somehow I was acceptable or that somebody would like me or any of that stuff. So during that 5 years of counseling, I did have to take some medication because there was a lot of stuff to work through. But anyway, because I know that there's been people who are really struggling, and I think that when we have some major trauma, it is okay. But I will tell you this. Okay, so it's sometimes though, like I remember my husband be like, if I was having a little bit of an attitude, did you take your depression medicine? That doesn't go over well. It's kind of like asking a pregnant lady if you're hormonal. I mean, come on, really? Okay. So anyway, it's like, because you think it's real. I don't care if it isn't, but we think it's real, all right? But anyway, so when I did quit taking the depression medicine, it's one of those ones you have to wean off of. He told me not to tell a soul, and then I had been off it for probably a year and a half before I even told anybody because, you don't want to get that residual, because it takes a long time for somebody to see you for who you are, and especially if you're in a relationship with people every day. It takes a long time for them to see the person standing in front of you versus the person that they redeem you to be from this season or whatever. And that's why when it says Jesus couldn't minister in his own hometown because he wasn't perfect, we all like to think that he came out with a halo and stayed that way. I would say, once you figure out that the Bible is translated wrong and that the word sin is translated wrong, you'll realize that he probably had the same crap going on as we do. But right now when gosh, I can't believe I said that. But the thing is that, yeah, okay. All right, so basically, we all have a journey of a process of healing, and like I said, well, let me put it to you this way: the counselor, I didn't realize that my upbringing was so traumatic. I mean, I knew it sucked, but I didn't realize. But I thought everybody's life kind of sucked. I mean, I know that yours didn't suck quite. Because if you had money, you had a little bit less of a sucky life, in my opinion. But I didn't realize the emotional stuff because you just don't notice that. But so anyway, I lost my when I try to explain. I just need to talk because then I feel like I better explain that. Because then I lose my space and I don't remember what I was talking about. Does anybody remember the trail I was on? Oh yeah. And so basically, when the counselor finally released me after 5 solid years, of course I'm, thinking I'm all that in a bag of chips, right? And I'm like, so now that you're releasing me, So on a, I said, how was I when I first started seeing you till now? She goes, well, and I didn't ask about my family, but she decided to throw that in there. She goes, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the best and 10 being the worst, Jodi, you were a 10, Roger was a 6, and the kids were 4. And I'm like, what? The drug addict was half as messed up as me? That can't be. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? And she goes, well, Jodi, and then she tries to go in, but she goes, I don't even want you to look at that. Look at it. The miracle is you're a 10 raised in 4s. She goes, you're a 10 raised in 4s. And I was like, well, and so I got to process that. And here it is. So people can grow up in this stuff and they can just repeat it. Because I asked my mom one time, I was like, you never threw a birthday party for us. She goes, well, I know. It's because my mom never threw one. But then I said, but Mom, I guess I just don't understand, because the hurt in my heart from that made me, my kids, my daughter had a DJ 16th birthday party with a lot of kids. Her birthday's December 14th. Somebody came up to her and said, hey, did your birthday suck because it was so close to Christmas? She goes, oh, no, I never even thought about that. You know why? Because I was never going to let my kids feel like I felt, like I wasn't even worth the time. In fact, it wasn't even that I wasn't worth the time. Remember those allergies I was talking about? Okay, so for my 11th birthday, now my mom's broke, right? So I guess this was a big deal to her. But she went and bought a case of Kleenex, like, the big boxes that had 15, 30 boxes of Kleenex in it. She gave it to me for my birthday and said, happy birthday, and laughed. She thought she was funny. She really did think she was funny. And I was heartbroken, okay? So the good thing about it, I guess, is that no matter what we can go through and stuff, that we can find that thing in our heart that says, man, that hurt me so bad that I never want anybody else to feel like that. Do you know what I'm saying? So through my journey, even in the Christian church, people would say stuff, or you'd go to people who you're looking at like as an authority, or somebody who's going to be ministering to you, and they can hurt you so bad. And I remember just my heart being broken so many times. People are broken, so they're mean, because they're coming from their brokenness. And I would take it to the Lord, and he said, Jodi, because I'm going to be honest with you, when I, during that vision that everybody laughed about when my husband and I were first together, now mind you, so part of that vision was I was standing on a stage like this. And it was one of those ones like that was really raised like outside, they have all the stadium lights and stuff. I was standing on that stage. It was kind of nighttime. I could see all those lights on, and all I could see was a sea of heads. Now, if you're going to laugh at me about having a vision and God telling me something, I'm sure is not going to tell those people that he told me. Well, at the time, honestly, okay, let's back up. So at that time, the only thing I'd ever done is karaoke drunk at the bar, okay? So I was thinking, well, I must be singing, because that's all I've ever done with the microphone in my hand, right, is I'm going to karaoke, So, anybody who karaoke's drunk, that's my only grid, right? Who's thinking that God 25 years later is going to put him in this place? You don't, right? Because you barely even believe that he likes you at that point, or that even wants you to be a part of this little family, because these little families mean, right? So anyway, so throughout the years, I've always known, of course, you'll all get a kick out of this. I remember 5 years into my walk with the Lord, I was like, God, because, he told me one time, because one of my things I'd asked him for, I was like, God, I want to be a master communicator, just like Joyce Myers. I want to be so clear that everybody understands what I'm saying. And I remember I was like 5 years walking with the Lord, and I go, God, it's been 5 years. Why haven't you used me yet? Because that's what we do, right? Because we're wondering. It's always, But I remember he said to me, you know what he said? He said, Jodi, because until you're healed, as many people as you could help, you would hurt if you aren't ready. And so it took, just to let you know, 25 years. This is technically, I've spoken a few times throughout the years, but this is, he just got done taking me into a sabbatical for 3.5 years of growth, because the thing he had called me to wasn't the church wasn't ready for yet, and so he took me, and then in March he released me. He said, okay, now's the time. I thought my first thing was going to be in September, and things happened, it postponed, and so guess what? You guys are my first fruit. Yeah, this is the first. And Lynn asked me many times, are you coming? I said, nope, I'm not coming. You go, oh, you should come. Nope, I don't want to go. I don't feel like I'm. And then one day I wake up and I open Facebook, and all of a sudden I see Brian's Fam Bam, and the Holy Spirit says, you need to go there. I'm like, oh. So I was like, well, I guess I better call Brian. It looks like the lineup's already done. I don't know, but I guess if I'm supposed to go, they'll make room for me, right? So anyway, well, I think I've kind of given enough of the past at this point, but I will say this. I've been in all the ministries. I was in the prophetic ministry, top prophetic. I've been in the demon possession, like we're going to get them out of you ministry, deliverance, and believed it all. One good thing I can tell people is like, hey, get into the prophetic ministry. If nothing else, it'll help you learn how to hear God's voice. You know what I mean? Because that's really vital. Because I'm finding that people who've been Christians their entire life don't know how to hear God's voice. It's what's really sad is my daughter, who ends up being like I was before in the other realm, in the religious system. I taught her really well how to get in that charismatic realm and in that. And I really wanted her to go to Reading to go to college, but she felt led to go to Boise Bible College, which I'm really glad she did, because that's where she met her husband, my grandbaby's father. He's amazing. I don't think she'll watch this. Okay, so Jesus can't minister in his own hometown, so she probably won't watch this, but my son-in-law might, which is good. So basically, well, because God told me, he said, she won't be able to receive what you have, but your son-in-law is really curious, you know what I mean? And that he said what you have will go through him and it'll go into your family, and it's really happening. And so, but anyway, so we when we're on this journey going, how many people feel like they've been awakened? You've been awakened, right? All of you, else you wouldn't be here, I would suspect, right? You've been awakened. If you don't know that, raise your hand. Yes. You've been awakened. Okay. Just wanted to make sure you knew that you've been woke. Okay. All right. So, but on the journey from waking up, here's the religious system, and then we're woke up to the journey we're headed on to total freedom. On that journey, there is a thing where we have a grid, a grid of thinking that has to be swapped out, right? Because, and the people get mad about this, but reason this out. Okay, everything, all your foundation that everybody has, you were told to believe that way. And people are like, no, I don't. And I was like, yeah, if you're a little kid, you grew up in a household, whatever they told you to believe about God, if that's when you learned about God, that is your grid. Somebody told you what to believe. Fast forward. Okay, let's say that somebody is an adult, right? You are an atheist. You never really heard of God. You've heard about people who do that church thing, but you don't know. So then you're like, you start feeling this pulling, like, okay, and you go to a church, right? Well, you know nothing. So what do? You sit there and people tell you what to believe because they're all supposed to know more than you, okay? So even though you may not believe it, everybody's original grid of thinking, somebody told you to believe that way. Somebody that you thought was smarter than you about the subject. Okay. Now, we've all probably learned how to hear God's voice since then. However, we're still using that grid to discern everything. Okay. Because if it doesn't fit in, that's why you can have conversations with people who have two different things of thinking and they're both feeling like they're right. Because if it doesn't fit into your grid, you know what I'm saying? You're like, wait a second. That's why we have so many denominations. You know what I mean? Because there's no unity there's no unity. And so anyway, so now that we're all in agreement that we all have the original grid of thinking because we were told to believe that way, on this journey that we are on, we will be getting new revelation, right? And God will tell us something. Well, let's not call it new revelation. Let's just say something gets shown to us and we're like, wow. And then you look at your grid and you're like, okay, that doesn't fit what I believe. So then you take that and then you pull up the thing that you already believed ahead of time, right? And then you have to weigh it out and decide which ones go, because only one of them can fit back in your grid. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, so then what's happening in this journey is that's what continues to happen. Okay, you come with this information that contradicts something that you've been taught. Now you have to weigh it out to decide which one's going in the grid and which one's got to go. Okay, because only one can fit. All right, so this is what the journey of unveiling that they're talking about is happening. So you're going from here to here. So we're all on a journey, and depending on where you're at in your journey, you can see where maybe other people are still at. So if you're a little bit further along in it, and some people, because we still have the religious mindset until we get revelation, or we get rid of that mindset till we get the new one, right? So we have to have grace with each other, because from here to here, there's a big long road of being, picking up the new information. You know what I'm saying? And weighing it out for yourself, right? And then deciding which piece stays and which piece goes, because we're all in the unveiling together. Okay, so tonight what I'm going to do is show you some of the stuff that might shock you, but you have to decide, because you're powerful to do this, if you are going weigh it out now, or if it's like, wait, this is just, I'm not at the place I can receive this. Or you could even think, she is so wrong. That is so unbiblical. She is wrong. And that's okay. You are powerful to think like that. However, I encourage you to just keep it in the back burner, because what I'm getting ready to share with you has brought life to me and countless others. However, we've been so brainwashed in the church that if you don't believe a certain way, you're going to get off, you're going to go to hell, those demons are going to get you, and anyway, you have to understand, I went through this. I was like, okay, so 2009, I go to church, right? And does anybody know who Paul Cox is at Aslan's Place? Okay, well, all right. I'm from the other side of the country. Okay, so, he's from California. That's probably why you guys don't know him, because you guys have probably people on your side that we don't probably know much about. Anyway, so he comes to the church and stuff, and he starts talking all this stuff, and I'm freaking out, like, mind you, okay, now, but by the time I get here, you guys, like this little, what is going on with this gnat? I'm telling you. Okay, so, right. Okay, they like me. They just keep they like me. Okay, so at this point in time, I feel like I've done enough work. You know what I'm saying? To where, kind of like you start in church, you're like kind of in kindergarten, you keep making your way up, and then you're in college, and like you're like, I'm almost there. like they're already having me speak. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're going, I've about arrived. You know the ladder that you're talking about, so you have to climb in order to be good enough to be used by God? Well, I'm almost there, because I'm already getting asked to speak. I'm pretty excited. And, because you're always waiting to see when God's going to do this, right? And so 2009, Paul Cox comes, and he starts talking about the checkerboard, and how, I know it's demonic, but it's also the same thing. You can cast, the sea of glass, and like he's just talking all this stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, how many of you guys have all cast out the Freemasonry, done all those prayers, and, we're going to save you from yourself and your past. Okay, yeah. All right. So he's talking about all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go home that night. Now, mind you, I pay for this conference. I trust my pastors, right? I pay for this conference. And so I go home that night, and I'm just confused, right? I'm like, ooh, this seems new age. Whew, because you get, ooh, scared, like, right? So I remember going home, and I'm asking God, and then my husband goes, oh, that was Friday night. My husband goes, oh, by the way, I'm working all weekend. I'm like, what? Caleb, my son's 8 years old. I'm like, oh, what do you mean? I'm going to this conference. I thought you were going to watch. Well, I have to work. And I'm like, oh no. So now, because now it's not just me. Now I'm taking my 8-year-old son there's no childcare, who has to sit in there with me the whole entire time, right? So I have my son, and like 8 years old, okay, 8. And so I'm going up, and I'm sitting at the stoplight, and I'm going, God, is this you? Because I'm thinking it feels new agey, and he, you know how God asks questions sometimes instead of answers? He goes, Jodi, do counterfeiters counterfeit a $1 bill? I'm like, what? No. He goes, why? I said, because it has no value. He said, exactly. The enemy only counterfeits that which has value. And it's time for my children to take back their inheritance. And, well, back then I still believed in devils, by the way. Okay, just saying. It spoke to me. He'll speak to you where you're at. And so, anyway, I was like, and then I said, but I don't know the difference, right? I'm like, what do you mean, Because I'm seeing this, like, all of a sudden I see this bottle that's 99.9% pure and 0.1% poison. And I'm supposed to know, like, what part of it's poison and what part, like, hello, I don't know how to tell the difference, Because it's all poison to me once you got that 0.1% in there, right? And so he says to me, just like bank tellers, when they train a bank teller, they never show them what a counterfeit looks like. He said they show them so much what the real thing looks like that they can automatically spot the counterfeit. So in other words, he's saying, I'm going to show you what the real thing is so much that you'll be able to spot the counterfeit. I'm like, okay. But then I'm like, oh boy, what does that look like? Because then you're kind of intimidated. Because, remember, I was in college and now I feel like I'm back in kindergarten. Like now I don't know what the heck's going on. This whole new thing you're showing me, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. So anyway, I took my son to this meeting, and so if that didn't speak to me enough, I get to the meeting and Paul Cox is talking, and of course I was a front rower. I was going to be early because that was my seat. Do not take my seat. I'm the front rower. I used to be there. Oh, it's so bad. Okay. So anyway, so I'm sitting up in the front row and my son's sitting right here next to me. He's 8. And so Paul Cox is up there talking and he asks a question. My son goes, ooh, 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 ooh. I'm like, God, when you're like, put your freaking arm down. What are you doing? Oh my gosh. What are you doing? So Paul doesn't see him. I'm like, thank God he didn't see him. Oh my gosh. So then he's going on and he asks another question. He goes, ooh, like that. And I'm catching his arm, but this time Paul sees it and he goes, what do you see? And I'm like, oh gosh, what is he going to, like it's a kid. What is he going to say? You're like, oh. So he puts the microphone up to and he answers it and he goes, exactly. And I'm like, exactly? Like this is my 8-year-old son. So then he gets back up there and he's preaching some more and he asks another question. There goes my son's hand again. Whoop. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh, the embarrassing parent moments. Okay. You're like, oh my God, what is he going to say? You know what I mean? And so he answers the question. He says, exactly. He does this a few times. Finally, he goes, hey, come on. Because I was actually sitting there. My son was sitting there. He goes, come on. He takes my son up there and he goes, we're going to have you do the rest of the service with me. And I'm like, oh, God. But I am telling you what, right now, my son, were you at that one, Lynn? Okay. My son was amazing. It was like Paul would say something and my son would see in the spirit and he'd tell him, he goes, exactly. And then he would go and he'd go, exactly. And then all of a sudden and I'm sitting here going, okay, being schooled by my 8-year-old, like seriously schooled by my 8-year-old. And if it wasn't good enough that God told me on the way that this was him, now I'm watching my 8-year-old going, okay, so obviously he can see you a little bit better than me right now. Okay, so then all of a sudden he's standing here and Paul Cox goes, what do you see? And of course, we all see nothing. Okay, the adults see nothing. And my son goes, oh, I see a boat right there. And he says, and I see this, what looks like should be a lake, but there's no water in it. And all of a sudden the guy back doing this down goes, oh my gosh, I had a dream last night that I was supposed to come and feel the lake. And so this guy comes down and then he prays something and then it feels the water in the lake. Okay, so I'm just telling you, so God gives me my what I call 2x4 experiences so that I know that it's him, right? So he just used my 8-year-old son to do the whole ministry with this gentleman. In fact, the gentleman asked, okay, this is where I'm kind of embarrassed. The gentleman says, hey, I really feel like I'm supposed to take your son under my wing, right? Well, I can't afford it. We don't have the money to be able to do that. To this day, my heart is just, had I known what I know now, I would have figured it out, because right now my son is homeless on some really bad medication, thinks that all that stuff was in his head, and it is just like, as a parent, I really chose wrong. You know what I mean? Because how many of you guys are led by money? I mean, can anybody be honest with me? I mean, I have been led by finances. Like when Brian said, Jodi, I said, I'm supposed to come. He goes, well, can you afford it? I'm like, God told me to come. You're not supposed to ask me things like that. Because if God wants me there, it doesn't matter what it cost, right? However, I didn't know how far I was going. I didn't actually know where South Carolina was. I was like, oh my God, that's the other corner of the United States. Jesus, it's going to take me forever to get there. But anyway, so I guess that I'm just keep going through this. And then, but just to let you know that once God told me that this was the truth, he brought Ian Clayton Justin. Well, first, I was like really confused. So the following May, this was in 2009. And the following years in 2010 in May, I go to see John Crowder. Anybody know who John Crowder is? Okay, so I go to what he calls a school of ministry. And I'm kind of excited, but I drive like 8 hours to Bozeman to go see him, get hotels for us and everything. And I will say the one thing I got out of it was the Song of Solomon is one of the best teachings on Song of Solomon I've ever heard in my life. However, don't call it a school if you're going to roll it down roll on the floor, okay? Just that is not a school to me because remember, I'm very intellectual, like, not, a lot of people might be able to learn rolling on the floor, but I'm just not one of them, all right? And so anyway, I get there, and everybody's rolling on the floor, and then John Crider's like this. And I go up to him, I say, are you always like this? And he's going, well, of course not. Like, and I'm looking at him like, okay, well, explain it. Like, okay, every time I see you're like this, and you're saying this isn't normal, well, freaking tell me something normal. I don't even know how to get there. What the heck, You called this a school. I drove 8 hours for a school, and these people are laughing and rolling around. I ain't learning nothing. Come on. So then I was really, like, frustrated, and God just kept saying, I was so mad. I said, God, you told me it like this and that. And he goes, Jodi, eat the meat, spit out the bones. And I'm like, okay. And then I was like, okay, deal. Obviously, this is part of what's coming, but could you at least send somebody normal to teach me this stuff? So then all of a sudden, my pastors are bringing in a guy called Ian Clayton. I'm like, oh, he speaks normal, okay? Now, he might speak fast, but hey, dude, have you guys noticed? So do I. So I listen fast, right? I mean, I can listen. In fact, believe it or not, you could be talking, I could be talking, and I can hear both of our conversations at the same time and understand them. People get frustrated when they have conversations with me because they can't do that and they think I'm rude. So I try really hard to remember not to do that. But I really can hear you. You just can't hear a thing I'm saying, and you're probably irritated at me. So anyway, so then Ian Clayton came, Justin Abraham. So I'm learning all this stuff, and then God finally tells me, Jodi, this is your ministry, and this was what the people weren't ready for. Well, now I don't even, so my ministry is something I freaking know nothing about. Thanks. Oh, nice. Got to go learn. Because I was kind of mad at him. Anybody else has struggled with a performance? Okay. Well, any of you all then would understand this, because I finally chased all this, and I'm almost there, and you have no freaking energy left. And you're right there, and you're like, okay, I've used all the energy I could. I'm here. And God says, oh, by the way, there's a new dog. I'm like, what? It's I mean, because it's like you're starting over, kindergarten, right? I'm finally in college, and I go back to kindergarten, and I know, now I'm like, God, I'm tired. He goes, good. And I'm like, that's not funny. That's not funny. I'm tired. I don't have any energy to go after any of that stuff. And so anyway, so then through then was the journey of through this journey was actually the truth, because I didn't realize all that stuff I was chasing. Because honestly, when he told me there's a new one, I was really mad at him for 5 years. I really was. Because you know how a lot of these woke people are mad at the people that taught them? I was never mad, because I always knew I heard God's voice. So I was mad at him because he did it on purpose. And I was like, well, he did, because I hear what he told me to do this stuff. And so basically what ended up happening was he said, Jodi, he said, I needed you to go on that journey, because when I wake you up and you're a forerunner, you need to understand where they're at. Because if you would have come and told me some of the stuff that I say 15 years ago, I'd have argued with you. Oh, honey, you are going down. You are in such, oh my gosh, you went into you got to stay away from that new age place. Boy, can't you feel them demons when you even get close to that door? I mean, it was bad. I was like, I could, well, because that's what we taught, deliverance. So I could tell a demon from I could tell when one walked in the door, and I could tell how many you had. I mean, I was prophetic, so I could see them all. Just saying. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Is that prophetic or pathetic?
Yeah, right. Hey, here's the deal. If the truth is that whatever you can lead somebody's mind to believe, they're going to see it, because you've taught them to see something, right? And that's what happened, So basically, like I said, I've been through and taught the prophetic. I've been through and tons of deliverance and helped people to learn how to do deliverance I've been through it all. It was all my wasted time of all those years. And but through that process, God had to really He did bring me a lot of healing through some of that stuff, because it was a process of healing. And but it wasn't really, and I had gone through a lot of healing, but as soon as I got this new message is when my peace came. Because my very first prophetic word was, I won't tell you what I did. Well, oh shoot, God, really? Okay. All right. And it's recorded? Oh, okay. Oh, nuh-uh. Okay. All right, here's the truth. Oh, geez. Okay, well, God's telling me to say this, and I can't believe it. Okay. So, yeah. Okay, so Okay, so when I first, my mom was trying, she got like all Holy Ghosty on me when my kids were little, and they were like 2 and 4, 3 and 5, and so I go over to my mom's, and I lived in Boise at the time. I had Victoria's Secret. She always wanted that, and I go to her house, and I was always like, "What do you want for your birthday?" And she'd always say, "Oh," because our birthdays are 5 days apart, So I get over there, and she goes, "Oh," she always is like, "Oh, I want Bath and Body Works or Victoria's Secrets or something like that." So I always knew what to bring, right? Because she didn't have one of those in her town, and so every year the question is the same. I was like, "Oh, you can have anything you want." She goes, "Anything?" I'm like, "Yes, anything you want. I want you to go to a camp meeting with me." I'm like, "What?" I was like, that was a freaking setup. I was so mad. And not only that, to top it off, what she gets me for my birthday? A freaking Bible. I was so mad because I'm not walking with the Lord. And I was like, you wasted your money on that? I was like so mad because I didn't want a Bible. I mean, okay, you want to know what I did for a living at the time? I shouldn't even tell you. Oh my gosh. Okay, so one of the reasons that my husband was so fascinated with me when we got married is because I did in-home parties for adult women. People don't know that about me, but now everybody does. But okay. So, So here I am getting this word from the Lord, and this lady, I don't know what a prophetic word is, right? So I go to this camp meeting with my mom, and as I'm walking in there, mind you, I only have the Seventh-day Adventist church and I'm sitting there, and this is outdoors. Number one, it's hot. Remember me? Don't like heat. Okay. Which, hey, thank you, God. It's really nice in here. Okay, so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I don't have a grid for any of this. I hear this woman behind me cackling like a chicken. And I'm like, what the? And then, and I'm like, what is that? That lady, I don't even want to look, back there. And I'm sitting there, and these people are so weird. And then these people are going up for prayer from the pastor, and because I have no grid, and I'm like, oh my God, these people are doing the nasty plunge. What is going on with these people? These people are praying, and they do the nasty plunge. I got people behind me cackling like a chicken, and I'm like, oh my God. And my mom, of course, guess what, wants to sit in the front row. Right? I'm like, oh my God. And she's so proud of me, This is my daughter. I'm like, oh, please do not. Oh, geez, And so this lady comes up to me, and she goes, oh, honey, I want to pray for you. I'm like, okay, being nice, okay. And I'm sitting in the front row, and my daughter is sitting right next to me. Actually, she decides to stand on the chair right next to me. So this woman starts praying for me. And, mind you, when you're wounded, do you cry? Nobody sees you cry. When you're as tough as I was and you've been wounded that bad, nobody sees you cry because you don't. So this woman comes up to me, and she's like, can I pray for you, honey? Can I put my hand on your heart? And I'm like, yeah. So this woman starts praying, and oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm like not sure what's going on, and I am bawling, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then all of a sudden I get this impression to stick my hand on my 5-year-old daughter's heart, and that I'm supposed to release and share it with her, right? So I go, and all this is done, and my mom's like, will you write that in her new Bible? I'm like, oh, well, now I'm actually really happy because that word right there has kept me going for a long time. But anyway, so I go out to my car, and I'm smoking a cigarette, and I'm like bawling, like, oh my God, is this you? Like, this is craziness, Lord. Is this you? I said, I need to know. And all of a sudden, I am not kidding you, this huge angel, because now it's the only thing I had a grid for. I had this huge angel that showed up, and it was like sideways like this, and those really, really long trumpets. All of a sudden I see it like this, and then I see that, and I start bawling. I'm like looking around to see if anybody else can see it, and it's like I'm the only one, and it's giant, right? And so I'm like, okay, so this cackling stuff and this nasty plunge is good. That's all I know. I have no grid for it. But anyway, so my mom had started on this journey long before me, but then she really got out of the church, and she was starting to get into this. Once I got really into the church, she got into what I called the New Age. And oh my gosh, I feel so bad now because she was trying to help my little brother's wife. And she would take her to these little New Age stores and teach her some stuff. And of course, then I'd find out. I was like, oh my gosh, no, Mom's a New Ager. You got to get away from that stuff, And so now this poor woman is literally in that mess that I just got out of because of me. And I'm like, oh gosh. Because, those people that are complaining about those people that taught them. I was one of them. It's like, oh gosh, But anyway, so you've kind of, I think you kind of got my journey. In fact, you got some of it that I never thought I'd share publicly. So you're welcome. Oh gosh. So I guess, but once you put it out there and stuff, it's just truth, So So long story short, when I first met Brian, when he came into my life, he said, God told me that when people come into each other's lives, he said that they bring something for each other. And he said that, what did you say God said that when I walked into your life, it was that prosperity and provision walked into your life? And it wasn't right away that I realized it until later that God, the reason Brian came into my life is because he had my last missing piece of healing. And that was the trigger message. And I didn't realize it at the time because, we can all, so I went through the journey of realizing that when something triggered me, to stop blaming somebody else for it and to realize that there's something inside me, a lie that I believed. And so then, I was doing really, really awesome. And for years now, nobody could tell if I was upset. And just to let you know, if anybody knew me before, it was on my face. I didn't have to say nothing. You're like, oh my gosh. I could walk in a room and not even say anything. People are like, oh my God, stay away from her. You can tell she's mad. I don't know what's going on. Right? Because it was that was just me. So, but then I got really good at I'm so healed that nobody can even tell that just ticked me off. I can still smile. That's awesome, right? I was like, this is awesome because I've never been able to get away with this. And then one day God goes, right, because I was one of those, hey, have you ever heard of those people that just kind of go, and the other person goes, bah! Okay, that was my husband, right? He could go, then I go, bah! That was me. So when I didn't make any, when I was able to control that and smile when I was really ticked, I was thinking, man, I've really arrived. Until God said, no. He said, now you got to work on the inside. He says, if you're not in peace, you need to figure out what's going on because everybody else might think you're happy and you're full of joy and peace, but you're not. So now you need to go deeper. And so then the next journey was, okay, well, there was obvious things you could tell, but if I wasn't in peace, it's okay, why do I have anxiety right now? What is going on? Or, so basically that trigger message ended up, let me help you with this because this is going to be part of the message. But basically, whatever is going on with you and somebody else, if somebody deliberately hurts your heart, that is completely different than being triggered, okay? I just want to make sure people understand that because you can be triggered and it be a lie that you believe on something. And then there could be just somebody said something that's so hurtful and the hurt is because that person thinks that way about you. And and it'd be like, that hurts my heart hurts that you think that way about me. Or you think that I would, because once you're healed, and you have those people that still see you, the old version of you, and they come up and they're like, I know you were thinking that. I'm like, no, I really wasn't. Yes, you were. And I'm like, oh, it hurts my heart. It's like, I know that you still see the old me, but that's not what I was thinking. And it just kind of hurts your heart, But triggers, what I'm noticing, the biggest thing about triggers is that a lot of the church has taken the well-known triggers and given you vices to pretend like they're not triggers and that they're not lies you believe. And so part of my job is to help you realize that if you blame, deny, or deflect, then you are not dealing with the one thing that you desire the most, which is to be completely free. Because as long as a demon did it to you or somebody else or this or that, you're not taking responsibility. And so what happens is that thing has all your power, whatever it is, whether it's your demon, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your coworker, whatever it is. And so this is so not where I thought this was going. Oh my gosh. Okay. So how much time do I have left? That's it. Oh my gosh. I didn't even, oh my God. Okay. Well, okay. No, I'm not going to get triggered. That's okay. I'm not going to get triggered. I just feel like that I didn't say quite enough. Okay. So the one thing that I want you to leave with is that you are living the life that you live because of the way you think. Okay. Oh, no, I need you to do the scripture. Okay. I got to get this scripture really quick because I think that if you can get this inside of you. Now, this is the only version that says it this way, but it doesn't matter because it is true and it is powerful. Okay. So let me get to it. Thank goodness, because I don't have my glasses. Oh my gosh, I can't even see. Oh, there they are. Okay. Just started having to use these a little while ago, but one of my beliefs is that I'm going to have 20/20 vision. in the natural and in the spirit. Okay, so I want you to go to Song of Songs 4. Does your microphone work?
Yes.
Good. I'm going to have you read it for me. Song of Songs 4, are you there?
Yes.
I want you to read verses 7 through 11. And I want you to hear what God says about you.
Every part of you is so beautiful, my darling. Perfect is your beauty, without flaw within. Now you are ready, my bride, to come with me as we climb the highest peaks together. Come with me through the archway of trust. We will look down from the crest of the glistening mounts and from the summit of our sublime sanctuary, from the lion's den and the leopard's lair. For you reach into my heart. With one flash of your eyes, I am undone by your love, my beloved, my equal, my bride. You leave me breathless. I am overcome by merely a glance from your worshiping eyes. For you have stolen my heart. I am held hostage by your love and by the grace of righteousness shining upon you.
Okay, so the version that I read, actually, in it, I don't know, maybe I missed it, but he says it 3 times, my equal, my bride. Did you hear that? Has anybody ever heard that before? My equal, my bride. Okay, so how many of you ever have felt, because I want you to understand, we do love God. We hold high respect, honor, reverence for him. Okay, but how many of you feel like his equal? You go, girl. Okay, so when I told Brian that I need to come because this, in this, I said, before I speak, we need people to tell people who they are. Because if you don't know who you are and you still think that he sees you as a worm or less than, or you're not going to feel worthy to receive. So I encourage you to read that in the Passion Translation. When I read it, it said that my equal 3 times. I didn't hear him say that, but I only heard it once, but maybe he did say it and I missed it. But the thing is that until you realize that you're not the worm that you've been told you are, and that he actually calls you his equal. We've heard all the other words, beloved and bride and all that stuff, to where we've almost gotten to the point where we hear it and it doesn't sink in. You know what I mean? Because, it sounds pretty. I've heard that before, blah, blah, blah. But what about my equal? How many of you feel like God's equal? Right. And see, that's the thing right there. Because we have been in the church for so long, and I'm going to say this publicly because I think it's really, really important. We have been taught a schizophrenic gospel, and I've been saying it for a long time. And when Kay Fairchild said it on her message one time, I sent her $100 and just said, "Thank you for saying that out loud, because it's true." And people are like, "Well, what do you mean?" And really, what it is if you really go look at the definitions, it's like 1 minute you're being told that your mindset's here, and the next mindset's here and here. So we've been so confused.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I didn't read the last 2 verses.
Okay, I was wondering okay, go ahead. You want to read the last 2 verses?
10 and 11, yes.
Okay, perfect.
How satisfying to me, my equal, my bride. Your love is my finest wine, intoxicating and thrilling, and your sweet, perfumed praises, so exotic, so pleasing. Your loving words are like the honeycomb to me. Your tongue releases milk and honey, for I find the promised land flowing within you. The fragrance of your worshiping love surrounds you with scented robes of white.
See, the thing is that somehow we've been taught things, and I don't hold anybody into, because a lot of translations are wrong and things like that. Nobody set out to be like, oh, I'm going to be a pastor so I can screw them up. No, they love God, and they're just trying. And the seminar, what do? They go to a school so that they can tell them what to believe, what's right, so that they can share. And so it got mistranslated a long time ago. And so that's just what we have to remember, that there is, if you go all the way back to Hebrew, I don't know, anybody know who Mike Popovich is? He's really doing a really good unpacking of that right now in the beginning and stuff. So we have to realize who we are. And the thing is, we've been lied to. And, like I've told people that the church is kind of like a cult, because it really kind of is. And hear me out, because I know that'll freak people out. But the reality is that if you don't believe like me and you get out there and think something different, that devil's going to get out there, devour you, and you are going to be chewed up alive. So that's fear. You know what I mean? It's fear. But because how many of you, when you first started hearing this, were scared? Hello? I was like, oh my gosh. Like, remember they came and I was like, God, wait a second. Seems new agey. I'm going to get off. Oh my gosh. I don't. And God said, Jodi, you hear my voice. He says, you hear my voice. I will not let you get off. So I just want to, the message that I have is that your personality creates your personal reality. Your personality is made up of the way you act, the way you think, and the way you feel. Okay? So your personality is how you act, how you think, and how you feel. Okay, and so that right there is what creates your personal reality. And if you want a different personal reality, you have to change your personality, which means you have to change the way you think, the way you act, and the way you feel. Okay, so let me, can I have 10 more minutes just to at least briefly go through this? If not, then that's fine. If you don't want me to, it's okay. All right, so basically what's going on is that a lot of the stuff that has been taught about the giving message has been half right. And what I mean by that is what you believe is what you receive. However, how many of you guys see all those people out there is like, oh, if God, I'm believing God's going to give me this airplane or this or that. And I mind you, I honor all those people, because I still honor and respect those people, because they had it partially right, and it really did work for them. It's just that they were at the pulpit, so we all gave them their money for their stuff, and we don't got nothing. Okay, so I told God, I was like, I was born poor, but yeah, remember I said I was in that car, but I knew I was going to grow up rich. I didn't understand, because my grid for that was not there, but I just knew I was going to have money when I grow up. I'm gonna. My mom even said when I was born, I had my hand out like that, and he says, oh, it's a girl, she's already asking for money. But money's always been a big deal to me. So I wanted to figure out, you can ask Len back in those days. I tithed in all the offerings, and I sowed this, that. I was big at that. But the thing is that, that those people had it slightly right. And what I mean by that is what you believe is what you receive, and what you ask for, your desires, your heart, you're supposed to have. And the reason I play that song when I came in is because this is what God told me. And I want you to think about this. He said, your time on earth was supposed to be one giant vacation. And when you leave, if you don't have it, you're going to be disappointed, because the whole reason you're here and that I gave you a body is so that you could experience things you can't when you're a spirit. You don't know, you wouldn't know what chocolate tastes like. You wouldn't know what it's like to have a cool drink of water. You don't know what it's like to have a hug or a kiss or any of that stuff. You don't know what it's like to fall in love, right? But the thing is, but what's happened is, because of all the wrong mindsets, people are making death their savior. It's like, oh my God, when I die and I finally get this. Well, the thing is, but when you die, everything's gone. And so if this is supposed to be one giant vacation, God, then how am I supposed to get that vacation? Because my life does not look like a vacation. And so he said that whatever you believe is what you receive. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that, kind of, sort of. But what he said is that you and him, did you hear that? You are my equal, okay? And do you believe you're his equal? And do you believe he's in you? Do you believe you're one? And that when he says you co-create, the only way you can co-anything is if you're one with something, right? Co means two, right? So in order to co-create, then how do we do that? And the thing is part of the problem is that we have been taught in the church that God can say no or not now. right? I mean, who's heard that, right? Now, no or not now. Okay, so does anybody ever think that if God could really say no or not now, that why we have rape, why we have child molestation, why we have, like, if God could say no, then why isn't he saying no to that stuff? Why is it he's only saying no to me when I want my car, a brand new car? You know what I mean? It's like, I can't have a new car, but that person can go and, you know what I'm saying? It just doesn't make any sense. Let's get some logic going on here, okay? So, because people have made ministries out of telling people why they can't have what God said you could have. And it's not even scriptural. I'm just telling you, it's not in scripture. Okay, so basically, anybody else fascinated by money? I've been fascinated by money since the day I was born because I didn't have none, okay? And so, and I was always a saver and this and that. So I always wanted to figure out, how do I get some? And so anyway, through this journey, God started showing me that what you believe is what you receive, right? And so you've always heard the battlefields in the mind. Yes, Joyce Meyer. You've heard a lot about the mind. And originally I was going to call my message The Mind of Christ, and God goes, no. He says, nobody cares. That's overused. So what do you want me to call it? He says, I want you to call it accessing your divine inheritance. He said, because this doesn't just have to do with money. And it does have to do with the mind, but it's like we've never been taught how to co-create. Now, honestly, you could even take this, and it doesn't even say how to get money. Like when it says that we're supposed to have money, what does it say how we're supposed to get it in the scripture? Do you guys know? Because we always hear about getting a job, right? But it doesn't say that. It actually says to inherit and to receive, right? Who in this room would be tenacious enough to say, okay, God, teach me how to inherit. So I'm not going to just believe to have a job. I want to learn how to inherit, right? Because that's scriptural, right? Okay, but here's the deal. We're always thinking like, what's wrong? Why isn't this happening? God, don't you like me? You know the stuff we go through. What do you like them better because they got that and you haven't given me nothing? And have you ever seen these people and they they want something, but you can see that their life has a pattern. You're like, yeah, if you keep that up, it's not going to come. And who's going to tell you that? Because I'm sure not telling you. You know what I mean? These people that keep having the same thing happen over and over and over again in their lives, and you're like, you don't even want to be their friend anymore because you've heard that story 732 times. It's like, oh my gosh, it's the same story. Well, that's the thing, is because we get in this rut, in this cycle. So basically, what you believe is what you receive, right? So first, and if any of you guys have heard some of the people, this will sound familiar. But anyway, so what you think, which is a clear intention, okay? It's like, what do I want, right? So here, okay, then you have to use an elevated emotion, right? And they have to connect. Okay, so I'll be honest with you. I've manifested a house. I manifested a car. My girlfriend, her daughter, she calls me up and goes, oh my gosh, and we're praying wrong. If you're asking God for anything other than to help your heart on something, you're praying wrong. Because let me tell you something. It says, I've already given you everything. We're going, God, please give me a car. God, please give me that gift. No, it says, I've already given you everything, right? But we haven't been taught that. We've been taught that that's how we pray, we beg, we cry, all that stuff, but we don't. So the only thing I ask God for right now is like, God, reveal to my heart, like something that I might not see, or like, I just ask him to help me see stuff. Like if I'm thinking wrong, bring it to my attention. But the reality is that he's already given you everything. He says, I've set you before you life and death. You're co-creators. What you believe is what you receive. I'll give you all the desires of your heart, right? Well, we're thinking, but here's the deal. What we don't realize is that we are only conscious of 5% of our thoughts. Statistically, I'm way beyond that because I've been practicing, but and you might be too, but 5%, they say statistically, we only are conscious of 5% of our thoughts. The other 95% are subconscious. And what that means is that you're only aware of 5%. Like, and during that 5%, you're like, oh, I believe in this and this and this for that God's going to do this for me. But in your heart, you have a spirit of poverty and you don't believe you deserve it, or you have this repetitive cycle that keeps coming over and over again, to where something's going to happen. Like as soon as I get money, as soon as I get $5 in my hand, I swear to God, something happens and I have to give it away. But some bill shows up. Like I heard this stuff my whole life. Okay, it's like I don't have a pot to piss in. Blah blah blah. All that stuff. I mean, I grew up hearing that stuff. I forgot all that. Sorry, repeating what my mom said. Bad word. Sorry. But the thing is that in order to get what you want, we have to become aware of what we're thinking about. And the problem is that you can't just be aware of that 5%. You have to be aware of what's in your heart, because here's the thing. Your heart is what creates, right? So what's already in your heart creates automatically. It's kind of like, your thoughts and emotions are the seed, and then it just produces, right? So basically, okay, my girlfriend calls me up and because this is real prayer, guys. You got to hear this. I'm going to say as fast as I can. But my girlfriend calls me and goes, oh my gosh, Jodi, my daughter she has a lump in her breast and we're so worried. And at the time I didn't know that they had a family thing of breast cancer, and I didn't know that at all. She had never told me that. She goes, and she found a lump in her breast, this and that. And she's scared. And I said, okay, stop. Okay. Well, I'm just going to believe that, now mind you, I know nothing medically, so I have to just use something I already had happen once. I was like, I'm just going to believe it's a clogged duct. When you're nursing, a clogged duct, and she's just going to have to put a warm washcloth on that or stand in the shower and it'll be gone. She goes, I can believe for that, so that's what we believe for. And guess what? 2 weeks later, she goes, oh my gosh, Jodi, you're never going to guess what. She just went to the doctor and they said she has a clogged gland. And so she's crying, telling me this, right? Okay, so fast forward months, maybe even a year later. So she goes, Mom, Jodi, my mom is going into the doctor and she's in remission for breast cancer and she has this screening and there's something going on, blah, blah, blah. And so here we go again. I was like, okay. And somebody is like, oh, isn't that a word of knowledge? No. I'm choosing what I'm going to decide I'm just making it up. I'm just telling you what I'm going to believe the outcome is going to be because we're going to believe this because this is whatever you believe is what you receive. So I'm just going to choose to believe this is the outcome. Bam, right? So we're texting at this point and I'm like, okay, I'm just believing, because I know her mom a little bit. She's kind of very proper and stuff. And I said, well, I'm just going to believe that she's going to go in there in the doctor's office because I misunderstand all this stuff, but it doesn't matter because I'm still going to believe something, right? I didn't know I was misunderstanding the whole thing, but so I'm just going to believe that she's going to go in the doctor's office and she's going to sit there and they're going to say, hey, it's completely clear. And she's going to be reserved like she is, but she's going to feel like jumping up and down and kissing the doctor and hugging him, but she's not going to. She's going to hold it back. She's going to get out to her car and she's going to just start bawling and the relief, because how many people know, God, I believe, but help my unbelief? That's where I felt like she was at. And so I said, she's going to be in the car and she's just going to be crying and thanking God, praising God in the car now that she's alone and not embarrassed and stuff like that. And so I don't even know. This was just the next day or whatever. So she calls me the next day and she says, Jodi. She goes, my mom called me and she had the appointment and she's telling me this and this. And I said, well, what did she say? She goes, well, what I did is, she goes, I just sent her the text that you sent me. And she said, she called me right back and she goes, you tell Jodi that's exactly what happened. But let me tell you what, see, this is my ignorance, okay? Because you can believe for something that isn't even supposed to happen, because what ended up happening is when she went in there, she was just supposed to get the test and leave. Well, I didn't know that. So I said, and it usually takes a long time for it to get read to get back to the doctor. Well, I didn't know that. So I was believing that she was going to get that report tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And guess what? Never happened ever in the history. She gets the thing, she goes to the doctor's office, they give her the report, bam, bam, bam. Usually they have to come back for it. Bam, right? Okay, I just chose what to believe, right? And then she chose to come into agreement with me, okay? So that's what true prayer is, right? Okay, okay, on the way here, right? Okay, sometimes it's a little harder than others, because if it's for somebody else, it's a whole heck of a lot. When you don't have any skin in the game, it's really easy to believe for somebody else, right? It's when you got some skin in the game, it's a little harder. Just saying. So I'm on my way down here, right? And I think nothing of missing my airplane because I'm just going to get here, right? I missed that dang airplane. And then I'm just like, okay, and I'm kind of irritated and stuff. Well, now my next airplane to Philadelphia is 30 minutes late, and I have an hour connection, which gives me 20 minutes. Okay, so now I'm like, my suitcase has everything in it. I don't got no clothes with me, don't got toothbrush, don't got pajamas, I don't got nothing but the clothes on my back. And I'm like, oh, I am not. And so I'm getting kind of anxious, right? Nervous. And then it's like, okay, Jodi, practice what you preach, right? So I'm like, okay, so when you have anxiety in your heart and you can't get rid of it, you have to think, okay, I'm struggling with the anxiety, so I can't just pretend it isn't there, because it is, right? So what am I going to do? Okay, so what do I have inside of me that I can do right now when I have all this anxiety? Because I can't just be like, oh, I made it to the plane. I wasn't there, right? When you have emotions, you have to deal with them. So I close my eyes and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go like this. Okay, I remember what it was like when I was thought that I was going to miss my airplane, and I was concerned, and now I made it. Oh, I'm so happy. So I kept doing that because I couldn't get rid of the anxiety, but what I could do is be like, okay, I'm going to live in the end as if I'm already on that plane and I didn't miss it, right? And what would it feel like? Oh, thank you, God, that I didn't miss this airplane. I remember all that anxiety I was feeling, because I still am feeling it, So I remember all the anxiety that I was feeling when I thought that there was a possibility I'd miss that plane too. So basically what ended up happening is that I'm training myself to create this, okay? Because in order to do this, you have to be so focused on the awareness of the right now. The reason that people, stress is caused by you not being able to control or predict an outcome, okay? So here's the problem. In order to create the life you want, the reason we have the life we have is because it's comfortable. Have you ever heard that saying that poop stinks but it's warm? Well, you don't usually say it like that, but cow poop, or whatever they call it, it stinks but it's warm. In other words, it's comfortable but it still stinks. Okay, that's what we do, is we stay in that, right? So that's our life. I mean, we're comfortable with it, right? Okay, so in order to get a different outcome, we have to stay in a place of what they call the unknown, right? It's hard to stay there. It's not hard. It's actually easy. It's simple, but it's not easy, because we have to learn how to control our mind. So as you're going through this process, and like, what kind of a life do you want, right? I'll just give you one other example, and then I'm going to wrap it up. So I really wanted my kids they lived 8 hours, well, at the time they lived 5.5 hours away, and I wanted my grandkids to be by me, right? And so anyway, so I started just believing, well, my husband had said when he was growing up that he lived next to his grandma. Well, I heard next door, even though it was like a long ways away. Are you guys ready for me to wrap it up? Because I can just stop. Are you guys done? Okay. All right. So basically, so I heard next door, even though it was blocks. I didn't know it. So, and then during this process, I had already sowed a seed, which we'll get to that another time. Sowed a seed to have God pay off my house. So he said, oh, if you buy this this pastor in Uganda house, I'll pay off your house. Well, because I believed it is why it happened. It had nothing to do with the seed or God, because I am a co-creator, but he'll meet you where you're at in your stupidity. So anyway, so my house was in the process of getting paid off, and I'd really, really wanted my kids to live next door. Roger had come down one day and goes, hey, this is before pre-COVID, and he says, God just, now mind you, our house, if you looked at it, was not be worth $1 million. He goes, comes down, God just told me that our house is going to be worth $1 million, and Coeur d'Alene's going to be like a little LA. And I'm like, nuh-uh. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, woo-hoo, $1 million, right? And then I realized, well, gosh, if this one's $1 million, then one next door is going to be $750. It's not like I can sell this and live on $1 million when that one's $750. So I started believing to buy the house next door. So anyway, I had this plan in my head, but then I started adding to it. It's like, well, gosh, I'd love my grandkids to live there. So I started, and I never told them, because I didn't, the relationship wasn't there. That's all I'm going to say. They were very proud to be with the pastor family. You know what I mean? That, because we were getting a little too weird and crazy. So anyway, so I just started believing that for them to move next door. So what I did when I was practicing this stuff, you guys, this is the real key right here. So they don't live there, okay? In fact, they live with his parents at this time. So I'd close my eyes and I'd visualize what it would be like if they did live there. My two little granddaughters, which would have been 1.5 and 3 at the time, tootling across the front yards, coming in. What would I do with them? And I would do that. And there's no rules to it. You could spend 5 minutes. You could spend 10. It could be like randomly in the day. This whole thing about meditation, I just do it whenever I think about it. And then all I do is create, like, okay, if they were coming over, what would we do, right? So we do that. Well, one day I remember sitting there, and mind you, it just like took me by surprise, because all of a sudden I feel tears running down my face. And all I'm doing is visualizing, okay? And because at this point, becomes so real. And it's such a deep desire in my heart for this to happen, right? Well, just to let you know, I started believing for this, and 1.5 years later, I bought the house and they lived there. And I will just tell you this, prior to that, they ended up moving further away. And I was like, they went from 5.5 to 8 hours away. I'm like, oh, that isn't working, right? But God just kept saying, Jodi, the biggest thing he tells me, anybody got control issues, want to try to help God out? Okay, that's me. And so he would tell me, he said, Jodi, he said, just to let you know, he said, it's none of your business how I'm going to do it. He said, because as soon as you try to figure it out, you no longer believe in it's already happened and you're pushing it away. And I do have some testimonies where that did. God told me to sell my condo rental business, because he said, I'm going to start traveling. So I actually sold it twice, and they backed out twice. And let me tell you something, because I could believe for it, right? And I believed, yes, yes, yes. And then something wouldn't happen because that company wasn't doing their job, and I would flip out or whatever, and then they'd back out. And I'm like, oh. So I'd go out and I do it again. So I believe and believe. Somebody, the second buyer comes, they're doing it. And wouldn't you know it, same thing. It's like, and in the middle of it, God's telling me, Jodi, you're pushing it away. Because you're control, like I'm yelling at the people on the phone. No, like I'm like, what, because they say, well, it'll take 4 weeks, and now it's 4 weeks plus, and I'm like, well, it'll happen when it happens. I'm like, no. It's like, so you have no control, right? I'm like, I'm under contract, blah 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 blah. So just to let you know, I'm still processing this, but at the same time, I manifested a house, a car, my grandkids. You can manifest. I've manifested getting to be in the delivery room with my grandkids when they were born. Whatever your heart's desire. Oh, another one is I've been believing for years that we'd go to Europe. Just happened to be. I know this is going to sound funny, but my husband has to have surgery. And he has to have 3 months off. And with just long story short, we just happened to have the money, but we could use it on something else, but we're not gonna. But I've been asking God to go to Europe for 2 months for 16 years. My husband has to have surgery in January, and he has to be out for 3 months, and 2 of those have to be physical therapy. So after that physical therapy, we're going to Europe for 2 months for our 25th anniversary. So I'm just saying, unfortunately, this took a lot longer than I anticipated, so, well, hopefully I'll have a part 2.
I think you did great. Thank you. Anytime I get up here, it never comes out the way I'm thinking. It comes out according to what everybody needs to hear. And so when you're actually revelating, Jesus didn't bring a 3-point sermon. He was all over the place. You ever read a scripture all the way through a chapter? It goes here, it goes there, it goes there. And it's because it's hidden mindsets. Because if you were to see each mindset as like a key on a piano, it's dun, 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 dun. If you've ever watched Close Encounters of the Third Kind, okay? You're tuning people. So it doesn't, what is spoken, it was never meant to make sense in the whole overview of it, but each part is targeting people's lives and shifting them so that we can begin to move in that awareness of strategy, and what the Father is bringing, making us conscious, right? I love how you shared about, the way in which we perceive ourselves. Jacob was one, right? Worm. Are you a worm, right? I used to do that. Oh, God, I'm a worm, because I thought that was humility, which is actually false humility. And you kind of wonder, where did Jacob get that? He didn't get it from God. He got it from bad parenting. I mean, think about his dad, Isaac. All right? Isaac pushed Jacob away. He was partial. He liked Esau better. And the reason why he was partial is because I believe Jacob reminded him of something in himself that he repressed and hated about himself, because Abraham tried to sacrifice him on an altar thinking it was God that told him to do it. And I'm sorry, God didn't tell him to go sacrifice your son. Zoroastrianism told him, the religion he learned in Mesopotamia, that he labeled God, and thankfully God then led him through a process, just like we walked through religion, Abraham walked through religion. Otherwise, what was it? Jacob's wife, not the cockeyed one, Rachel. Leah, not Leah, she was the cockeyed one. But Rachel, what was she doing when Laban came in? She's sitting down. They said, oh, it's the monthly time, I can't get up. What was underneath her? All the family idols that had been passed down. Abraham obviously didn't get rid of the idols. And yet God was with him. You do understand that no matter where they were at on a wrong lens, God was with them and blessing them. He was never intimidated by their own belief or twisted beliefs. So a lot of these beliefs were adopted through trauma and dysfunctional families. And it was made into a God that has become Christianity today. And so we're deconstructing this stuff. And I love Jodi's story. Now, did you ever get the house next door?
They live there.
So now they do live there. So it took all that time. And now what? Huh?
I have to say it was only a year and a half from the time I asked for to the time
Okay. But didn't you say they moved away?
first.
How long did they move away?
For a year.
A year. Okay.
Right after I started praying, they moved it.
Okay. Now, can I just tell you how all of that was good? Because had they not moved away, you would not have dealt with the mindset of the need to control and push it away. Most of the revelation you have today is because you missed it, not because you hit the mark. Okay? So realize that you would not have the keys to help people out unless you had needed to be in control, to lose control, for everything to go opposite, to get the revelation that you don't need to be in control and that you'd be pushing it away. That revelation you just shared was one of the most powerful things you said today. That anytime you try to get something that you've already seen, you're actually pushing it away, right? All right. You would not know that unless you had done it. So that's why everything does work together for good.
What I was going to say is that right before I came, I was coming with a little bit more of a cocky message of, I just sold it. And then,
Yeah. Well, I think it was wonderful, and you bore your heart, and you shared. And I don't know how many of you could relate. You know, it was raw and real. That's what I like about Jodi. She's raw and real. Okay, that's why I was happy to have her speak, because I know that she does ruffle feathers. And, you know, she hits a lot of rabbit trails like I do. You know.
I don't have to talk about my past, I'm good. That's good.
Yeah. But, so what we're going to do is, I think we're going to snack until after the evening meeting. Are you good with that? Are you guys hungry right now, or did you get enough to eat for lunch? Okay, yes. Huh? Come on up. Do you want to share? Come on up. And did anybody ever find your phone? Did you ever find your phone? So she lost her phone, what, 2 days ago? It fell into some portal. We just lost it. So it's a black Samsung S10. So if you find it, give it to her. Go ahead, share.
Okay. We was talking about.
Everybody's getting ready to leave, share.
Yeah. Just 1 second. I want to just release this on everybody, please. I don't. We're talking about your imagination, and the word. Thank you. Imagine, and this is what I was brought to me. We separate that word. The word is I am, and then you have a, and the word is gene, Gine, but the actual translation is your gene, Gene. I am a gene, and what is a gene? Is your DNA. So I am a DNA of who? The Father. Whoa. So when you start doing your imagination, that's what you need to realize.
Say that again, Gene, because I missed it.
Yes.
Okay, so it says here a gene is what?
The word is imagine.
Imagine is the word gene.
Right. I am a gene, but the way we spell it is Gine, but it's not.
English is always messed up.
It's Gene. You are a gene. And what is a gene? It's your DNA. This is what he's saying. I am a gene of who? Your DNA.
Wow. That is powerful. I am a gene. And then you've got the gene as an image as well. And you can see that too, that you're a gene in image form. Isn't that cool? That is powerful. I like that. You guys fellowship, spend time together, 6 o'clock, and Pastor Rick will be ministering. He's going to flow first and do music after. We are going to do 6. Lunch didn't work out on time, so we're moving it up. Snack now, dinner after tonight's meeting.